Financial software packages are designed to make sure that you enter all of the data needed and to help you avoid mistakes. I called your attention to the two lines for Ivo Kirsten in the dues reconciliation report. Ivo's payment of dues to us and our payment of Ivo's dues to Toastmasters International. This is how the accounting software captured Ivo's payment of 1,200 hryvnia. The accounting software keeps separate accounts for each currency and each separate pot of money within a currency. This account is hryvnia cash. Notice that the accounting software keeps a running balance in the right-hand margin. Within that account, it first captures the date of the transaction. Next, it captures the payee. The system knows Ivo. When I enter the letters I, V, O, it prompts me with his name. It automatically fills it in if I want. It lets me, however, enter a new name when one appears. We get a couple of new Tanyas every year. There are two columns labeled Spend and Receive. Every transaction is one or the other. You can only fill in one of the two. Enter the amount of the transaction. Next, it asks for a category for the income or expense, so that like transactions can be grouped for reporting. Lastly, the question that you do not always need to answer: what is the description of the transaction? Add more detail if you need it. Budgeting is the process of setting annual income and expense targets. There is not enough money involved in the Toastmasters Club to make this a really valuable exercise. Our objective, especially since the start of the war in Donbass, has been to keep our dues as low as possible. We are acutely aware that Art Talkers Club dues have risen from 350 to 1,200 hryvnia over the course of 4 years. This is due primarily to the falling exchange rate and secondarily to our joining the district. Members' incomes have not increased. We see the number of members declining a little bit, and we see a different type of member as our club is no longer as affordable for students. Every club in Ukraine is affected by the same factors. For the moment, our objective is to keep our dues at a minimum. For this reason, most clubs budget events as they come up. I just showed you how Art Talkers is budgeting our club birthday. First, we will ask members to contribute to a collection box, and secondly, we refer to what we have done in the past for a guideline. Toastmasters International assumes that the club will keep its money in the bank. When clubs can do this, the bank does their accounting for them and the treasurer's job is easy. Ukrainian banks do not want to deal with entities other than individuals. They require tax IDs and a lot of documents that are hard to get. They charge more in fees than their service is worth. Therefore, volunteer organizations in Ukraine usually do not use banks. A second alternative would be to keep money in a separate cash box, hidden someplace in the treasurer's apartment. This also has a couple of problems. The treasurer is always involved in converting hryvnias to dollars. The treasurer has to use his personal bank card for payments and sometimes for receipts as well. There is no way to avoid transfers between personal and club funds. Moreover, the cash box could be stolen in a break-in. The third alternative, which every club uses, is to commingle the treasurer's personal funds with club funds. The treasurer acts as the club's banker. The treasurer owes money to the club in both hryvnia and dollars. When the treasurer acts as the club banker, this is where most clubs fall down. They trust the treasurer implicitly. They face two risks. If the treasurer is dishonest, there can be problems, and if the treasurer is simply unavailable for any reason, it may be hard for the club to operate. A club needs a firm audit policy, and it should always have two sets of eyes on the books. The executive committee should know how things stand on a monthly basis. Since the treasurer owes the club money in both currencies, currency exchange is simply a matter of changing one IOU for another. In this example, the exchange rate from the internet is 27 hryvnia to the dollar. The exchange rate in the accounting package is set to 26. The transaction indicates that 13,500 hryvnia are being transferred to the dollar account. The accounting package does the arithmetic and figures out that at an exchange rate of 26, that should amount to $519. However, in completing this transaction, the treasurer would enter the correct amount of $500 to reflect an exchange rate of 27. Auditing is especially important in a cash operation in which so much trust is placed in the treasurer. There should always be an audit when the treasurer is changed. The incoming treasurer should not only take charge of the money, but should ensure that the financial records are complete and accurate. Auditing usually involves keeping receipts. They are not required for major income and expense items that have to do with dues. The treasurer should keep receipts for club events, administrative expenses, and other such expenditures. To repeat, the major function of an audit is to be sure that the dues collected are going to Toastmasters International and that Toastmasters International records are accurate. The treasurer has to work with a bank card in order to pay Toastmasters International for books, dues, and supplies. This involves paying with a personal card and accepting cash reimbursement from the club. Toastmasters members increasingly want to pay their dues by a transfer from their bank. This requires that the treasurer or some other member of the executive committee accept the money. The treasurer can account for it as a cash receipt. Most treasurers in Ukraine use Excel. However, Excel is error-prone. It does not have any built-in intelligence to recognize frequent payees or expense categories, or to prevent the user from entering something that doesn't make sense. Excel does not have built-in logic to produce standard financial reports. It does not know what a balance sheet or a profit and loss statement are. Accounting software does. Excel does not have built-in logic to deal with currency exchange rates. It makes it difficult to produce consolidated reports covering transactions in multiple currencies. I advocate that the club buy financial software. The older the better. I use Quicken 2008, and even at that I have to ignore all of its more advanced features. Quicken wants to connect automatically with the bank and download transactions. In our case, there is no bank. The bottom line is that the most primitive accounting software is probably the best. The most important preparation for a club meeting is bringing a pencil and paper. During the meeting, people will give you money and ask for reimbursements. Make sure you write it down. Timeliness is the most important factor. Be sure to record every transaction immediately after the meeting before you forget. If you have accurately recorded it in the club's accounts, you can afford to wait to update Toastmasters International records. The treasurer should send a copy of the books to other members of the executive committee on a monthly basis. If other members of the executive committee understand accounting software, a fond but unrealistic hope, the treasurer can send backup copies of the files. A more realistic approach is to export all of the transactions, starting with the earliest date in the books, account by account, into Excel. This will result in a spreadsheet that includes everything except the running balance. You can add the running balance column, and the books are completely reproduced in Excel. Then, if the treasurer steps in front of a truck or elopes to Rio de Janeiro, the club can continue its operations. All of the materials in today's presentation are available on the Internet. Toastmasters International provides training materials and reference materials for club treasurers. This presentation is available for download from the Internet in three formats: PowerPoint, PDF with notes pages, and YouTube. There is also a printed reference entitled Treasury Policy for Ukraine. Lastly, your greatest resources are people. Bogdan Tratsenko and I have been treasurers of several clubs, Toastmasters and others. Bogdan has served as our area treasurer. If anybody would like to use Quicken accounting software, please ask me. I will be very pleased to help you set it up. That concludes the meeting. Now, for those of you watching on video, it's time to note the questions you have and bring them to the training session.